All right. Good afternoon, industry. My name is Prerna Singh, and today we're going to talk about building at the speed of AI without losing the most important part of the process, you. So, quick show of hands. Who here has been asked to bring AI into their product orgs? All right, fair number of hands. Okay, keep them up if you felt excited by that ask. Okay, good chunk of you. All right, raise your hands if you felt dread when you heard that. All right, the lights are bright, but I still see a number of people who've had their hands up the entire way. Truth be told, I felt the same way too. I felt both excited and dread when I was asked this the first time. And let's face it, it's pretty normal because every single day it feels like there's news of a new model that's just dropped or a new tool that can do all these crazy things. And LinkedIn posts making us feel like we're already leagues behind everybody else. But I'm going to let you in on a secret. Everything that getting started with AI doesn't require fancy degrees or new knowledge. As product managers, you have everything you need to get started with AI. And that's your product sense, your judgment, and your values. That's the foundation. And when you pair that foundation with AI, it supercharges one of the best ways we can make impact as PMs, and that's through prototyping. Prototyping is how we can cut through the overwhelm and go from idea to insights in a matter of hours, not weeks. And I'm going to show you how. But before I do that, why do I care about this so much? Well, as a self-proclaimed human-computer interaction nerd, I find it fascinating when technology has the power to change human behavior. And prototyping with AI changed the way I thought about product management. At Carnegie Mellon, I studied how even tiny changes in technology can have long-lasting impact on how humans think. And over the course of my decade-long career, building product, doing user research, and leading product teams at a number of high-growth organizations and startups, I've realized the hardest thing about building product isn't the code or the tools. It's about understanding people well enough to know what to build in the first place. And that's why AI prototyping matters. It's not about the perfect code or the perfect tools. It's about giving us a faster way to learn from humans, to test with humans, and to build for humans. So let's focus on the human part today. AI is leverage, but product judgment is still a human sport, and that's something that AI hasn't been able to crack just yet. To understand how AI does become leverage, though, it's important for us to take a look at how we've been building products up until now. So here's what I call the 2024 way. Define, design, develop, deploy. You've probably seen this framework a bazillion times, maybe with some of the words interchanged. That's not really what I want to focus on today. What I really want to focus on, it's what's happening in between each of these stages. What each of the arrows represents. Each arrow represents a handoff. Design to engineering, engineering to QA, PMs to everybody. Each handoff introduces the chances for miscommunication, for competing priorities to take over, and just general delays. Every delay pushes back the most human part of this process, and that's getting feedback from your users. For product managers, taking weeks, even months to get that feedback can be like a death sentence for your product, because every decision you make lags behind reality, lags behind what your customers actually need and actually want. Now let's take a look at the 2025 way. AI kind of blew up. everything we thought that was familiar about building product. What we now get with AI prototyping is a much tighter feedback loop. No more waiting around for design polish or engineering bandwidth. PMs can put something pretty freaking real in front of their customers in no time whatsoever. Feedback now comes in hours, not weeks. And that's the shift. AIs collapse the process so that the most human-centered parts, namely judgment, creativity, product sense, can happen sooner and faster. And that shift, that feedback, that learning is what lets PMs go from chasing tasks to actually driving impact. So what does this actually look like? Well, I wanted to walk you through a project that I built for myself, a really scrappy attempt to solve a very real problem that I was having. And you'll see along the way how this feedback loop actually comes into practice. So let me ground you with a real example. I run a monthly product leaders breakfast in New York City. Started off as 10 people. We were gathered in the basement of a small cafe in Union Square, New York. And it quickly grew to over 500 members in this community. Sounds like a great problem to have, right? Except it wasn't scaling as a community. A big value of having a community and building community is making sure that your members actually find the connections that they're looking for. But the reality of bringing 10 people together every single month was just a mad circus of Luma events and Google Docs and Sheets and endless amounts of emails. I honestly half expected someone to just throw me some flamethrowers just to create more chaos. I wasn't building connections. I was just buried in logistics. And the real challenge for me wasn't hosting these breakfasts, but it was making sure that the members of my community were finding the right people to talk to, having the right conversations, and were able to make the right intros. That's the human problem I wanted to solve. So I got thinking, can AI help me prototype the tool that I really need right now? Can AI help me be the connector that I really want it to be? So I'm going to show you how I built the first version of my prototype for this community tool that I needed. And I'm going to use the same framework that I just showed you earlier to show you how I did it. Now, in terms of tools that I used ChatGPT and Lovable, which is a code generation platform, as my tools of choice. You've heard me say this already. You're going to hear me say this now and again and then again and again. But the tools really do not matter. Not at this stage, not when you're just trying to get started. There's a dime a dozen tools out there, each with their pros and cons. And certainly at certain points, you can go back and evaluate which one is the right tool for you. But for me, at this point in time, ChatGPT and Lovable were the best ones for me to get started. So then off I started, and the first step in this journey was to actually define my problem. So I got started with ChatGPT. Not to code, but to think. I gave it the Socratic prompt, super simple rules. I told it to ask me one focused question at a time, push on my assumptions, don't jump to conclusions, and if I made a decision, to log it. And then I just taught, voice to text, fast, natural, messy, and if I were to be honest, a little therapeutic too. Why did this matter? Well, first of all, it allowed me to get that very fuzzy context that was in my head and into real words. The other thing it did was it really did help me challenge my assumptions, help me think about things that I hadn't even thought about as I was exploring this problem. And that is really where some of the beauty of AI comes into play. So this is what our conversation started to look like. And the screenshot's really small, so it's not worth actually reading every single thing that's in the screenshot. But what's more important is to really understand where ChatGPT shined for me. It pressed me on things like, who are you really building for? Is this for yourself or for members of your community? Things like, well, what happens if your user doesn't take that action that you think they're going to take? And other scenarios that I just hadn't thought of. And suddenly I wasn't daydreaming about these hypothetical features, but I was having very real conversations, mind you, that I'd probably be having with a team of engineers and designers if I was actually building with a team. But instead, I was having them with AI. And we were having very real conversations on clarifying the problem, defining our user personas, and defining the boundaries of this problem. Defining what you are going to build before you actually build it mattered a lot in 2024. It matters even more in 2025 because it's your compass. Without it, every shiny idea is going to look amazing. And heck, AI will happily let you chase after every single one of those too. But only you can point to the problem that's actually worth solving. So we had a lot of conversations back and forth, but once I had my North Star in place, I asked the AI to take our conversation and turn it into something concrete. And in this case, I asked for ChatGPT to actually give me a prompt that I could then feed into the lovable chat AI. And suddenly, I had a draft spec right in front of me. And the beauty of it all, I never started from a blank screen at any given point in time. And that's the leverage that AI has. It doesn't replace your product thinking. It accelerates it. It helps you start from a place that's sharper and faster. So once I defined the problem, I was ready for the next step, which was to go build. So I took that output that I got from ChatGPT and put it into Lovable, which was my tool of choice at that time. And in a matter of minutes, I got back a homepage, a member directory, and a member profile page for this community tool. Not a spec, not a wireframe, but something I could actually click. And that's the power of building with AI, turning words into actually working screens in a matter of minutes. Now, teams that I work with will often hear me say this, but one of my favorite sayings is every strength has its shadow. Shadows run pretty deep for AI. So let me tell you a little bit more. I was having a conversation with the Lovable chat, and throughout the conversation, we were talking about additional features that we could add. And so it gave me a long laundry list of things, of features that were missing from this community tool. And then at the very end, it very innocently asked me, would you like me to start implementing the missing features? At first, I thought, my gosh, this is incredible. That's amazing. I could just sit back and relax and let this AI run wild. Yeah, that would be a mistake. I know because I did that. What's really challenging about AI is that it doesn't have that product sense. It doesn't know what exactly you're trying to build. It'll do exactly what you tell it to do. If you tell it to sit, it'll sit. If you tell it to spin around, it'll spin around. It's like a golden retriever. It's eager, it's loyal, and has exactly zero product sense. So instead of saying yes, I told it to slow down. I asked, walk me through your logic. What would be the user journey if we did build this out? What's the architecture? What are some of the trade-offs that you're going to be making? Because building isn't just about building features. It's actually about solving the right problem and solving the problem right. And for that, you need to make sure that you have your logic, your user experience down before you start adding robust features to it, like a backend. And that's what I mean by sticking to your product guns. AI can generate, but only you can provide the vision and the product sense. And once the prototype had the basics, I asked AI to do two more things. The first was to actually have it reflect. Knowing what we've built together, how would you have approached it differently? Now, why did I ask that question? Well, AI is really great at following instructions, but it's pretty freaking terrible at telling you when your instructions sucked in the first place. By asking it to reflect, you force the model to step out of obedient builder mode and into alternative thinker mode. And sometimes that's really where the gold is. It might point out a simpler architecture. It might help you see a missed assumption or a different path that you didn't consider. For me, as I was talking to it and reflecting back at it, I realized that I had completely forgotten about what a logged in experience would look like versus a guest or logged out experience would look like. And for me, that ended up being a place where I realized I actually had to go back and rewrite some of my app to really reconsider that new framework. In other words, it's not about letting AI have the last word. It's about using it to surface blind spots and to help your learning. And I found that incredibly valuable because it forced me to confront decisions that honestly, I would have normally just passed off to my designers and to my engineers to make. But by having to build it myself, I had to make those decisions. And in that moment, I gained a ton of empathy for the kinds of conversations I realized I should be having with my designers and engineers when we go build real products. And if I were actually passing it off to an engineering team, I would give it the second prompt, which is to actually turn our conversation, all the decisions we made, all of the design and the logic that we had into a clear PRD that I could then pass off to the engineering team. So once we've defined the problem and we've built our prototype, the real magic starts when we can begin to iterate. Because a prototype sitting on your machine is worth nothing. You have to get it in front of your users. In just 2 hours from the time that I sat down and started talking to ChatGPT, I had the first version of my community tool in front of my first user, my co-host, for the breakfast. Not a wireframe, not a spec, but a real thing that she could click on and give me feedback on. And that's where the learning starts. Real clicks beat hypothetical scenarios every single time. And here's another place AI really shines. It's in speeding up your research. I ended up speaking to several members of my community, and I also spoke to actually a bunch of other community leaders to see if the problems I had were just ones that I had or if others had similar problems. I took the transcripts from each of those conversations, each of those research conversations, and I dropped them back into the same ChatGPT project that I was originally working in. And I asked ChatGPT for each transcript to give me a summary of the call, to give me some key quotes around validating the problem, a couple quotes around exploring the solution, and any mentions that the research participant might have had around sort of mismatches of expectation or any frustrations that weren't solved by the prototype that I was showing them. And boom, I had a really cool artifact that I could then take and put into that same project's knowledge base. And what the beauty of that is that it allows me to go back into the define phase and continue that sort of Socratic prompting I was doing with ChatGPT, but this time armed with that really rich feedback that I got from my users. The other thing it really does is it speeds up documentation. I don't know about how, like many of you, but documentation is almost one of the last things to do on my list of things when I'm PM. It just gets thrown off to the side. But what's really beautiful about this is that I was just documenting as I was going. So what's next for my community tool? Well, after talking to several of my members and also other community organizers, I actually realized that it wasn't just me that was having this problem. In fact, other community organizers also had similar challenges and were super eager to get their hands on a tool. So I've gone back and I've started rebuilding the same exact tool, but this time I'm using Claude with a combination of Git and Supabase to help me out with version control as well as the database management. Why am I using Claude this time? Well, like I said, Lovable was really a great solution to get started initially, but as I'm thinking more about how to create a tool that other organizers can use, I need a lot more sophistication in the way that the architecture is set up, in ways that Claude has been helping me think through what does a multi-tenancy look like. And so for those reasons, I am ready to move on and graduate to Claude, which has been really, really helpful in getting this tool stood up. Now, it might be frustrating to feel like you have to start all over from scratch, but to me, that's where the real learning has been, is to really understand what were the mistakes I made before, how to not repeat them again, and then to continue learning new frontiers of my problem and of my solution. And so that's really where this continues to shine. It's an amazing learning opportunity, if nothing else. But for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned, including being able to get the prototype in front of your users and to use the way that you're chatting with the interface to accelerate your own learning. Now, you might be wondering, this is a really cool side project, Prerna. I'm glad that you built it, but how does this scale? How does this culture scale to an entire organization? Because it's one thing for a PM to be tinkering on her nights and weekends, but when it's a team of dozens or hundreds, how do you get them to adopt the same mentality? Now, I'm going to say something that might ruffle some feathers, but I'm sorry, adding a key result to experiment with AI technology to your team's OKRs does not suddenly bring AI culture into your workplace. And yes, that was an exact quote that a PM I was coaching was told by her leadership. Working to integrate AI into the product orgs that I've been a part of, I've realized that there's actually two modes. First, there's sandbox mode. It's the opportunity, how I like to define it, is it's the opportunity to actually play with the tools. It's about giving people the freedom to explore by actually doing, without the pressure of having to deliver on key results or business impact or revenue. It's about giving them both the time and the budget to try these tools out. On the flip side, there's architect mode. Serious, a little bit more structured. This is where you really have to think about how your solutions will scale, the results that you'll drive, the revenue that you'll drive. Now, here's the mistake that I see a lot of orgs end up making. They jump straight into architect mode, just like the PM that I was coaching was told to do by her leadership. Use the AI to go faster, to work smarter, to drive more business results. Well, guess what happens? Overwhelm. People freeze. A lot like I mentioned at the top of this talk. The only way to get to architect mode is through sandbox mode. You have to give teams permission to play if you really want them to build things that last. What did that look like for me? For my product team earlier this year, we did a product offsite in Oxford in the UK. And the whole sort of focus was, how do we bring AI to our teams? How do we work faster? How do we prototype faster? And one of the other things that I'd heard from the team was, hey, we really want to explore Oxford. So I said, okay, why don't we find an opportunity to bring all of this together? So I ended up building a completely AI-powered scavenger hunt for the teams to go and explore Oxford with, from writing the clues to exploring the different sites in Oxford, to AI even generating me a live view map of where all the teams were at any given point in time. That playful energy translated into the hackathon, where a lot of our product teams were coming up with fun and wild solutions. It even translated to our CEO a couple weekends later, coming back to me and being like, look at what I just built. I just built a fitness app for my wife and myself. That kind of energy is what you need in order to make sure that you're building and giving your PMs and your product teams everything they need to succeed. That's what this moment calls for, to learn by doing. Give people permission, give people the permission to play, and you'll be surprised at what not only they create for themselves, but what they create for your business. And that's the bigger point here. The best part about building with AI isn't the tools themselves or the tech. The best part about building product is the human side. And that means that the best part about building product is all of you. It's your judgment, your creativity, your product sense. That's what drives innovation. AI is just another way to help us unlock it. If you'd like to get the prompts that you saw and want to dig deeper into the examples, feel free to use that QR code to get the slides. And please feel free to get in touch with me. I love nerding out about this stuff and how to bring AI into more orgs. Because AI won't make you a great PM, but it'll help you start faster, learn faster, iterate faster. I can't wait to see what you all build next. Thanks so much for your time.